You're listening to The South Stands, a Buckeye football podcast by Ohio State fans for Ohio State fans on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, and SoundCloud. The 2019 season is in the books. The LSU Tigers are your 2019 national champions, unfortunately, regrettably. Ohio State finishes number 3 in both the AP and coaches poll for the second year in a row. If you're a college football fan and you've been living under a rock, that's the only way you don't know those things. Star juniors Chase Young, J.K. Dobbins, Jeffrey Okudah, all off to the NFL, along with seniors K.J. Hill, Ben Victor, Jonah Jackson, Brandon Bowen, Davon Hamilton, Robert Landers, Jayshon Cornell, Malik Harrison, Damon Arnett, and Jordan Fuller. Spring drills are scheduled to begin the week of March 2nd, so that's 5 weeks from today. And the spring game is set for April the 11th. The Buckeyes already have 14 players from the 2020 recruiting class enrolled, including most of the headliners like Julian Fleming, Paris Johnson, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. I think I said that right. G. Scott, C.J. Stroud, and Jack Miller. I saw an interview with Mickey Marotti from earlier this week. He said this is the largest mid-year class he's ever been a part of. This is the largest group of early enrollees he's ever worked with. 14 of them. That's pretty crazy. My personal opinion is that the 2020 season is kind of a referendum, I think, on the 2018 recruiting class. We have not heard from many of these kids. That was the number 2 overall class back in 2018. They had 13 top 100 players in that class. The cream of the crop that particular crop has yet to really contribute anything. Nicholas Petit-Ferrer, Teron Vincent, Tyreek Johnson, Jalen Gill. They were the kind of headliners in that class. Now, some of those guys have had injuries, but really the only guy that's emerged as a star so far is Chris Olave in that class. And he was a 3-star, I think ranked somewhere in the 300s nationally as a recruit. So the way I view it, the 2020 season really is kind of, as I said, a referendum on that class. Guys, before I kick it around to you, I just want to get your views of some two pretty big announcements for Ohio State that come on the defensive side of the ball. That was the return of Kerry Combs as defensive coordinator will be his title, but we know his specialty is working with cornerbacks. And then, of course, Shaun Wade deciding to come back for his 4th year with the program. Chad, I want to start with you. Give me your reaction, if you would, to that news, and kind of let's talk a little bit about how you see the defense in 2020.
Well, I got to tell you, like Wade, obviously, was the announcement was first. I think everybody kind of knew that Combs was coming back, but yeah. I think that pretty much took everybody on this thread by surprise that Big Shaun Wade came back.
Yep.
And so big props out to him on that, man. That's huge for us. It's going to be a very young secondary.
Yep. And
on Combs, man, he's an animal. He's the man.
Yeah.
Like he's as low as like his saying is like I'm planting flags all over. He's crazy. And I don't know if it was Paige or somebody, maybe Ninjusi sent out those videos of like him just like freaking like over the years, him freaking out. Like, he just brings a whole new. Like Hazley obviously was well respected. Those kids loved him. Mm-hmm. But, Combs, I feel, just brings this crazy fucking animalistic energy into the locker room. So, but
all right.
So as far as our defense, I'm on the fence that I don't agree with that we're gonna see a drop off. Our defensive line is going to be sick. Okay, you've got Zach Harrison, you've got Tyreek, you've got Jonathan Cooper coming back, which was huge. And then our linebackers, tough back, fucking great. But I think he'll be like, seeing special situations as the season progresses and starts out. But you've got, linebacker, we're stacked. You got Wade coming back. I really believe that we're going to be strong. I think Cameron Brown needs to step up.
Yeah.
You're going to have Seven Banks. Let's see what he's got. Tyreek Johnson. I mean, the kid was a 5-star recruit.
Yeah.
So, he's going to be a sophomore next year. I see that kid being, tough. You've got Beer Reeves coming back. I'm not a big fan of him, but, whatever. But I think we're going to be solid, man. I really do. I'm excited about this defense. You've got, Antoine Jackson's back. You've got your, our defensive line is okay. Jerome Cage is going to be back. Haskell Garrett, he's going to be possible All-American next year. We've got the players. So I'm not worried about our defense at all.
Great. Paige, what was your reaction when you heard that Combs was coming back and Sean Wade?
I guess I'm in the minority with the Combs thing. I was kind of like, yes, okay. I mean, it's great. But if you think about it, the way I kind of thought about it, it's like, look, if you're going to choose to go play at Ohio State, what are the decisions or what are the factors that go into it? And I just kind of feel like, hey, look, Ohio State just being Ohio State with the brand, the tradition, the connections, that's probably 30% of it. Who's the head coach? That's huge. That's another 30% of it. And, position coach is important, but I just don't give it, a ton of importance in the big scheme of things, maybe 15, 20%. But then on the other hand, I look at a guy like Hartline and look what he can do, right? So, maybe, it's a bigger deal than I originally thought. I mean, I'm don't get me wrong, I'm glad he's there. And it definitely fills a void by Hafley leaving. So it's big. But in the short term for 2020, the Wade thing is to me just a much bigger development.
Mm-hmm.
I always think back to the 2002. Is this a Mike Doss moment, perhaps, right?
Uh-huh.
Where, one guy can just kind of maybe, flip the balance because we are going to need him. I'm not necessarily that worried about the defense falling off too much. I mean, even, like Chad just said, the linebackers, not to pile on those guys, but it is interesting when you think about it, that team last year and pretty much that whole roster is just a team full of difference makers. And for whatever reason, just the linebackers are not difference makers. I mean, they're bad players, but they're just middle of the road. And it's just kind of strange that they're underperform. And it definitely cost us in the Clemson game. So it would be great to see some, improved play out of that position group. But in general, I think I'm with Chad. I don't envision them falling off too dramatically.
Good.
And, probably don't have to be a number 1 or 2 defense in the country like they were last year. Just be in the top 15, and they'll be fine with the offense they're going to put on the field.
Mike, what do you think? Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Chad.
Sorry. I just wanted, I kind of glazed over the linebackers, and I 100% agree with Paige. But, you think back, Baron Browning, he probably would have already be declaring for the NFL this year if it had been for Shiano. You know what I mean?
Bill Davis?
Bill Davis, exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, next year you've got Baron Browning, Dallas Gant, you've got Hilliard, which he probably won't make a difference coming back. But you got Mitchell, who's going to be healthy next year. You've got Cade Stover, the freshman, and you've got, Pete Werner's coming back. So, I mean, it's going to – the linebackers, I feel, are going to be fucking solid next year, man. I really do.
All right.
You got those guys running back. And then one more thing, and I'll shut up. But going back to, Paige's comment about Combs, I think it's huge, man.
Yeah.
I really do for recruiting. I mean, you look at some of those guys, those 5-star commits that we had, committed, and they were kind of everybody was worried, Hafley's gone because he was such a good recruiter. I think that's huge. You look at all the guys that he recruited, Combs did over his years with the defensive back. I mean, that's all. Peace out.
All right. Okay. Mike, what was your reaction?
Borland is going to be a senior as well, right? Along with Werner?
He is, yeah. They're both back.
So the question is, I'm fine. The defensive line, I think, will be fine. I think they'll be okay. Just even though we lost Chase Young, I think the other guys will be fine. The DBs, Wade is going to help there. Obviously, we're with Arnett and Kuda. Those are holes to fill. Maybe Combs will help with that. But the linebackers, we have two players. Werner and Borland are kind of 2-year starters.
Yeah,
A year and a half starters. Those guys were they were not spectacular to say the least. I mean, the other guys were, could go pro. Those guys, I mean, they needed the perfect play to shine. They can't drop back in coverage well. They can't tackle in an open field laterally. I mean, the Clemson game showed that. Do we stick with them is the question. Do they stay back there, or do we have underclass or Brown or other guys that are waiting to step up, replace them? And have them come in on specialty downs, because I think we're going to get. I don't care how good the coaches are. They're not going to be, turn a player. This is going to be seniors. I don't think they're going to be. I think they're as good as they're going to get.
Yeah,
what we've seen.
Yeah,
that's my concern.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. I personally think Kerry Combs coming back is pretty important. I think he's an ace recruiter. I think he brings great energy as a motivator, as a coach on the sidelines. And I don't think it's any coincidence that while he was in Columbus, the first stint, 2012 to 2017, he had corners go in the first round virtually every year that he was there. Bradley Roby, Eli Apple, Marshawn Lattimore, Garyon Conley, Denzel Ward. He was really good at coaching up the corner position. I think, Ryan Day said he was going to go out and find the best coach in America to replace Hafley, and I can't imagine there could have been a better replacement for him than Coombs. If you look at everything that's asked of assistant coaches at Ohio State, not just coaching their position groups, but also going out and recruiting. And Coombs is a grinder, obviously, and can obviously recruit. It'll be interesting to see how he takes on a larger role as defensive coordinator, though, which he's never been. And he is now, I believe, the highest paid assistant on the staff. I think he's making like $1.2 million. So we'll see if he's up for that. I mean, the other thing is at corner, and then I want to comment on what you guys have said about linebacker. At corner, I'm not sure Combs is working with the same type of talent in the secondary this season that he has previously at Ohio State. He's got, certainly in Shaun Wade, he is. But if you look at some of the other kids that are coming back and that will be competing for playing time, Cam Brown, right? He was kind of the third outside corner last season after Arnett and Okuda. He was the 323rd player in the 2018 class. He was 54th among corners at the prep level in 2018. Sevyn Banks, the 221st player according to the 24/7 Sports Composite. Amir Reep, 186th player. Marcus Williams, 182. I mean, these guys are good, solid football players. Probably solid 4-stars, I believe, across the board, all 4 of those guys. But I'm not sure we're talking about Jeffrey Okuda, Shaun Wade, level talent. Marshawn Lattimore, guys like that. So I guess if there's a coach that can bring the best out of those guys, it would be Combs. But I'm not sure these guys have a ton of upside either. I'm hoping for the best there. But I'm really hopeful. Chad, you've already mentioned him, Tyreek Johnson, who was a 5-star in 2018. He was one of the headliners of the 2018 class. He is Shaun Wade's cousin. He played at the same high school as Shaun Wade. He's got kind of a similar profile, physically that is. A big, strong, physical guy. I think he played a little bit of both safety and corner at the high school level. Redshirted his freshman year. He was injured most of last year. I'm kind of hoping we start to hear about this kid in the spring, because that, to me, he seems like the kind of player that could develop into a star. I'm just not sure about the other guys. And, I guess we'll see. As far as linebackers concerned, the Cleveland.com guys, as well as the guys that I listen to on The Athletic, Ari Wasserman and the other guy, Bill Landis, they're all of the opinion that that Browning is going to move to the outside and take Malik Harrison's spot. and Tough Borland is probably going to rotate with another player on the inside. But I was just listening to the Bucknuts guys, and they seem to think that Browning and Tough Borland will continue to rotate on the inside, and another player, maybe a Dallas Gant, would then take the outside position. And the concern they had was they might start losing kids to the transfer portal if some of these other kids don't start getting into the mix, into the rotation in 2020, which I thought was an interesting point. And Mike, I think you might have even been hinting at that. Like, you know, is there anybody else on this roster that can bring some pop, some playmaking ability, some instinctual play, guys that can create turnovers and create explosive plays? I mean, I think we see a little bit out of Browning, but I mean, out of Tough Borland and Warner, there's not a ton of like explosive plays, which I think was really missing from the linebacker play last year, and we could really use going into 2020. You guys get any other comments on the back seven, the linebackers, or the secondary? No?
I just think you can't totally fall in love with the fact that the guy's a 5-star player.
That's a good point.
Maybe these guys are really good players, and guess what? They just happen to be, you know, on the 2 deep chart behind, you know, top 10 picks in the NFL. And the other thing is, you know, I don't know that it's completely realistic for us to just think that, you know, we're going to just field a team of 5-star guys that are NFL talent across the board. It's just unrealistic, right? I mean, our offense, we're not, you know, maybe we'll get to that, maybe we won't, but, you know, most teams have some deficiencies someplace.
Yeah.
Clearly, that's probably where it's going to be for this team. So you're going to have to compensate it in other ways. And I think Day is smart enough to figure that stuff out. And then, you know, back to the Coombs thing. It's important. Yeah, definitely. But those kids are going to come to Ohio State anyways. Case in point, the 5 guys that they had signed up, and I know they lost one guy, they still came, right?
Yeah.
The guys are going to come, you know, so the recruiting piece of it, yeah, I mean, it makes a big difference, but I don't think it's the be-all, end-all. It's, you know, who's your head coach and what school are you recruiting for goes a long way. So, I don't know. I don't put as much importance as you guys are putting on it, but that's cool. That's fine.
Okay. No. I mean, I know. Leigh Marie always talks about, you know, assistant coaches as kind of middle managers, you know, and you can kind of, you know, they're a dime a dozen, and you know, he's with you, Paige, I think, in that, you know, they're important, but let's not overstate the importance of them. They're at the end of the day, they're middle managers.
And as long as they're just not the best man in, you know, Ryan Day's wedding, I'm pretty cool with who their assistant coaches are.
Yeah, I misspoke. I think with the linebackers, the Bucknuts guys were talking about Kayvon Pope as potentially a starter on the outside. Should Ohio State decide to continue with a Tough Borland, Baron Browning rotation in the middle, Kayvon Pope would be the next guy in line to replace Malik Harrison. Now, I know they also consider those 2 linebackers positions as kind of interchangeable because I guess we'll see. It should be a really interesting competition. Sorry, Chad, were you saying something?
So what I've been kind of reading about the linebackers is like Warner's going to be your starting, you know, strong side linebacker, and then Hilliard will back him up, as you know, and then at middle you're going to have Tough Borland. Unfortunately, like that's what I've been reading. They've got, you know, and Gant backing him up, and then you've got Barron on the weak side, and then Pope backing him up. But I think we got some good options. I mean, Pete Werner did, like, NFL scouts were talking about that guy all year because he can cover the run and he can cover, you know, receivers going out of the back, you know. So yeah, I like Pete Werner. He put some hits on some people this year, man.
Yeah, I think Warner gets a bit of a bad rap. I mean, he's often covering. He's often going out in coverage and locking down, you know, tight ends, and you know, he's, in other words, he's not at the line of scrimmage and probably doesn't get as many opportunities to make plays in the backfield as the other linebackers. Agreed. I think he's been solid. I really do. I think, you know, he's got good size, and I like him at that spot. The Tough Borland, you know, he's, again, Well, the interesting thing is like they had the opportunity to find somebody else to play in the middle when they completely turned over the defensive coaching staff after last season, and the new guys that came in, the new coaches that came in, continued to stick with Borland. So certainly there are things he must bring to the table as a player that maybe as fans we just can't appreciate, we can't see. But I'm with you, Chad. That's what I've also read, that Baron Browning would move out to the weak side and take Malik Harrison's spot, and then would probably rotate with Kayvon Pope out there. And that to me makes the most sense, because you're going to need a guy on the outside with speed and athleticism like Harrison had, and size. And Baron Browning to me seems much more naturally suited to the outside than the inside. I don't know. Mike, what do you think? You got any other thoughts on the back seven?
Yeah, we don't need an explosive player in linebacker. We just want some competency there. And well, maybe you got. Maybe senior year is going to be their year. They were a weakness. They were a hole to exploit. But maybe senior year, it's like there's lots of players that don't blossom until the third year in the NFL, for God's sake.
Yeah.
So maybe they. And Warner really, I think you're right. I agree that he wasn't that bad. He did do some decent work out there on the outside, but it'd be nice to see like another big time. When was the last time we had a big time Ohio State linebacker? Crawling around in the middle. I can't remember.
Well, the 2015, the 2015, circa 2015, 2016, right, where we had Raekwon McMillan in the middle there. And guys, why am I blanking on his name? The big playmaker, Darren Lee.
That's right.
We have not had. Yeah, we have not had that. The linebacker play from the last several years has definitely been several notches below that level. There is no Darren Lee in that linebacker core right now, and there isn't a Raekwon McMillan locking down the middle of that defense. They are several notches below, and you would think at Ohio State, with the way they recruited, there's got to be one of those players on the roster somewhere, unless they've swung and missed in recruiting for several years in a row at linebacker. It would be nice if someone could emerge this season. We start hearing about somebody in spring practices. Hey, this is the guy. This guy's emerging. He's starting to turn heads.
Right.
Go ahead, Chad.
Now, I believe we have a couple of those who are going to be freshmen, and actually both of them are early enrollees for there were 20 commits. Court Williams, that kid out of California, that kid's a baller, dude. And then you've got Cody Simon from Jersey, dude. I think those are two guys that have the potential to step up and be somebody like a Darren Lee, because they're and the 21 class too. You got the Reed Carrico from Ohio. Dude, we got them coming in. I agree with we don't have them now, but they're coming in.
Yeah, but dude, guys don't. Those guys are not going to. There's certain positions that you can come in and make an immediate impact. Linebacker is that never happens. Maybe Andy Katzenmoyer. It's like once every other decade.
Yeah.
And I just think those linebackers. And
I agree.
I think part of it might have been the fact that, Jesus, you're stacked defensively in every other position. So let's just put guys in there that we know are going to be, schematically sound, and they're the safe play, because we're good enough to win, every game with them being in there. And so they didn't take any chances. But it goes back, remember, it's like when Todd Beckman was our quarterback. If it takes you 5 years to be the starting quarterback at Ohio State, then you probably shouldn't be the starting quarterback at Ohio State. And I feel the same way with Tuff Borland. Okay, Pete Warner, I give him a pass, but I don't know what more we have to see from him. He's neutral at best.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm looking at Tuff Borland's stats, right? He finished, he was fourth on the team in tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 1 sack. He had one interception in the Cincy game and got run down by a guard. I was at that game. I watched. I was right there watching the play. I go, that's a touchdown. He could walk, and he got run down by a guard. So I just
forgot about that.
You remember that play? With Chase Young leaving and Jeffrey Okudah gone, and Jordan Fuller, some of these guys that were big-time playmakers. I wonder if there's going to be a sense of urgency with the defensive coaching staff to see what else they have at linebacker, where else they can make, they can put pressure on the quarterback, where they can create turnovers. I am a little worried about the back seven. I want to see if Baron Browning has another gear, has another level that he can reach. I thought he had a good, solid junior season, 10 tackles for loss, 5 quarterback sacks. He's got a niche. He can clearly get after the quarterback. He can line up on the outside and get in the backfield. I want to see if he's got another level that he can reach. I think it's important for this defense, if they're going to get back to the playoffs and make a serious playoff title run. Baron Browning is one of those guys that's going to have to find another level in 2020. And I'm hoping maybe there's one other guy. We start hearing about this guy in spring practices. Maybe he has a big spring game. Where's this guy been? Wow, all right. He's deflecting balls. He's stepping into passing lanes. He's getting after the quarterback. He's forcing fumbles. I think we need a guy like that this year because Chase Young is gone. And I think we're going to be very good in the defensive line, but we're missing that explosive playmaker. And you need explosive playmakers on the defensive side, and there aren't a ton. Shaun Wade, to be sure, there's explosive playmaking ability in Baron Browning, and then I don't know where else we get it. Where else on the roster are we getting it? Or where else on the roster have we seen evidence that exists? I think there are some questions there. Sorry, was somebody going to say something?
No, I think look for what you just mentioned, like one of the breakout players in spring practice. I think that's going to be Terada Mitchell as far as linebacker goes, man.
Yeah, I hope so.
He's just dealing with some fucking injuries, and but I think he's going to step up and make a name for himself in this room.
He has been a little he was injured last year. Is that right, CP? He was dealing with some injuries.
Yeah, he was didn't really play at all because he was banged up.
Okay, all right, that might explain why we didn't see much of him. All right, so the other area I wanted to look at the defensive line. We've got a bunch of good, solid defensive ends coming back. We've got a lot. I think the only guy we lose, right, is Chase Young. We got everybody back who was in the defensive end rotation from 2020 now. Young's a big loss, but we've got everybody else coming back. I'm looking at the depth chart from the Clemson game. Tyreek Smith, Zach Harrison, they were co-starters at one end. It was Harrison that actually started. Tyler Friday was also in the rotation. All 3 of those guys played in the national title game. Chase Young and obviously gone, but Jean-Baptiste will be back. Javonte Jean-Baptiste will be back. And then, of course, Jonathan Cooper's coming back for one more year. I think that's a good, solid rotation of defensive ends. Another player I think that needs to find another level, another gear for 2020, I think has to be Zach Harrison. If Harrison can have a similar growth trajectory that Chase Young did in his sophomore year, I thought by the end of his sophomore year, Chase Young was a menace. Chase Young was the player that we saw in his junior year in the last 3 or 4 games of the season. We need a similar trajectory out of Zach Harrison, I think, in his sophomore year. Chad, talk about the defensive ends in 2020.
I was just looking at some stats like Zach Harrison, man. It might not have shown, but he had some great stats this past season for being a true freshman.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was Madison. One of those guys said that they feel that Zach Harrison has every bit of the talent that Chase Young does, and it's gonna shine. So that's pretty exciting and bold to you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, just to back you up on your point there, Harrison finished with 5 tackles for loss and 3.5 sacks, and he had a couple of nice tackles on Trevor Lawrence in the playoff game. A couple times Lawrence got out of the pocket, and he kept Lawrence there and limited him to 1 or 2 yard gain. I remember that specifically. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh no, I was just listening. Yeah, he was impressive, man. Hey, you know what? One thing we forgot to do earlier, I'd like to give a what up to R.I.P. the Mamba. Kobe
Bryant, yeah. How
These
about
kids
that?
some good memories over the years.
Yeah, jeez. Oh, man, well, that's a whole nother podcast there. Yeah, devastating news. Yeah.
I thought you guys
Sorry,
mentioned
I didn't mean to add a downer there, boys. But
Yeah,
you guys
Debbie Downer right in the middle.
sorry.
Mike, tell me a little bit how you see the defensive end position in 2020.
With Chase leaving, there's two questions. Here's the question: the guys that were racking up the stats in the last 3 games of the season, because Chase was either double teamed or whatever. He didn't not hear his name called much.
No.
And the big game, the Michigan game on, but the other guys were doing just fine. Harrison and a lot of guys. And the question is, were they doing that well because Chase is getting double teamed the whole time? I tried to watch the line. Sometimes I'd watch a play and just focus on the line and see what Young was doing, especially if you hadn't heard from him in a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't really tell if he was getting double teamed or if they just figured out maybe something about him. Anyway, my feeling is that the line is going to be fine, especially Zach Harrison. He was a freshman, right?
Yeah, true freshman. Yeah.
Yeah. And Young went from basically an kind of a overgrown, uncoordinated man-child to the man in just 1 year. Remember? I mean, when the Bosa brothers and then Nick Bosa was in there, Chase Young came in and he come in on passing downs or something, and he looked like he could do something, but he had problems jumping off sides. He went from that to the number 1 pick in the draft in like a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think we have the prototypes for guys to do that again. I think our line's going to be just fine. In fact, out of everybody, the 3 lines in the defense, the secondary linebackers or front 4, I'm least worried about the front 4.
Yeah, I mean, well, you have Larry Johnson there, right? Who is, he's the defensive line guru. So there's good reason to trust his track record, and they've recruited well at those positions. So I think, as you say, there's good reason to trust that someone will emerge or multiple guys will emerge. They're also pretty banged up there. It'd be nice to see a healthy Tyreek Smith. He was in and out of the lineup all year. Paige, you have any comments on the defensive ends in 2020?
No, I'm going to channel my inner Sloaner and just say we're going to be fine. I think we've covered it.
Yeah. Okay, good. I think the area to watch is on the interior. And I think the defensive tackle position, I think they have an opportunity on the inside, as well as Jayshon Cornell and Davon Hamilton and Robert Landers played on the inside for Ohio State. What I'm reading and hearing is that Ohio State could actually be better on the interior this year than they were last year, and actually that could very well be the identity of that defensive line. I think a lot really hinges on the health of Teron Vincent, and he was one of the headliners of the 2018 class. He's got an NFL pedigree. His father played in the NFL. In his case, he was a defensive back, played at Wisconsin, had a great NFL career mainly with the Eagles. Vincent is a guy that has superstar upside, top 10 NFL pick upside. And I think it's crucial that he get healthy. From what I'm hearing and reading, there's a lot of optimism around him getting healthy and ready to contribute this year. You pair him with Tommy Togiai, who started to flash last year at nose tackle, and then Haskell Garrett will also rotate in there. I think they could be very good on the interior. And if you're dominant up the middle, man, if you're getting pressure up the middle, you're stuffing the run up the middle, they have an opportunity to be a very good defensive line. So do you guys have any comments on the interior? Chad, I'm going to kick it back to you. Any comments on defensive tackle?
I'm just going to let everything you said. I'm like, you pretty much covered everything. And I 100% agree, dude, that Vincent is a beast.
Yeah.
He's crazy.
Yeah.
So, I honestly, our offensive line and defensive line, 100% on the offensive line could be our best, better than this year and could be one of the best of all time for 2020. But I think our defensive line is going to be pretty fucking solid, too.
Okay, good. Mike, you have any comments on the interior of the Ohio State defensive line?
Landers is graduating, though, right?
Yeah, he's gone. Yeah.
Okay. Because he was really starting to, come on. I thought he was coming back for one more year. So, anyway.
No. Okay.
I think we'll be all right.
All right, Paige.
Tommy Togiai is Chad's BFF.
Well, they say he's the strongest guy in the roster, right?
Oh man, he's fast. That dude's fast.
Yeah. No, we'll be fine. We're going to be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just,
All right. Well, let's spend a few minutes. I know it's a Sunday, guys, and we're you guys probably have other things to do with your time. But let's look at some key position battles on offense. We don't have to look at every single position. Obviously, there are some that are completely locked down. Most of the offensive line, obviously, we're going to be as good as anybody at quarterback and at offense. I want to talk a little bit about starting running back. Paige, I want to start with you. And I have this question. Is Master T good enough to be the man at running back?
I think the real question is, what kind of offense will Ryan Day design if he's not? Because he's got playmakers all over the field.
Yeah.
And again, I kind of come back. Yes, it'd be nice, to have J.K. for another year or an Ezekiel Elliott. Woe is us, Buckeye fans, that we don't have a top 5 running back next year. And so the sky is falling and we're doomed. Now, I'm not saying it's not a legit question. But I think if he's not, then it's up to Day and Wilson to design an offense that exploits just the plethora of offensive firepower every single other place on that field, right?
Yeah.
The offensive line is going to be sick. I don't know how you're going to have enough balls to get to all these wide receivers. I mean, you got Olave and you got Wilson, who they're going to be. I mean, especially in Olave with just this chip on his shoulder. Like I shudder to think, how he, ups his game next year. And then the incoming freshman, there's just going to be a lot of different ways that I think Day can come up with something if, Master Teague isn't, quite the level that, we've had in these last few years. So I think he's a good back. He might be, better than that, but it doesn't concern me. Oh, and then by the way, you have Justin Fields, who'll probably be the second pick overall in the NFL draft next year.
Yeah. Mike, what do you think? What are we looking at in the Ohio State running game next year?
With Teague, we saw some flashes of brilliance there, but it turned out they were mainly against, some of the weaker teams, I think, and maybe against, maybe during mop-up time when we had like a huge second quarter and come in the third quarter.
Right.
I don't know. He's only a freshman. It'd be nice. We've had a lot of Ohio State freshman backs that really show their how good they are. I'm thinking of like Beanie Wells. They had big runs towards the end of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Masters T kind of went away at the end of the season there. I mean, I know Dobbins was the man and got all the carries, but when T came in there for just a couple, he looked like he was a step out of it. He wasn't ready.
Yeah.
So I have to see the other guys, and after that, besides McCall, I don't think I saw another back play. And so I'll have to, watch spring training, keep my eye on all that because I have no idea what we got besides Master Teague.
Yeah, Marcus Crowley is a name that has popped up. I believe he is also a cousin of Sean Wade's as well. Went to the same school in Jacksonville. Chad, what do you think? Yeah, Jacksonville. So, Chad, you got any thoughts on the running game?
I think honestly, there's a good chance that Crowley will have overtaken the number one position, running back position by mid-season.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I feel like he'll get some play. I mean, certainly, I think it could very well be a 50-50 split with Teague. But of what little I've seen of Crowley, to me, he looks like a back that has the ability to make that first guy miss. Get to the second level, has acceleration. He's got more wiggle than Master Teague. Master Teague looks to me much more of a north-south type runner, kind of more of the, I don't know, some of the guys we've had in the past, a Boom Heron. Or
he's got speed, but he can still put his shoulder down.
Yeah, I mean, you need a back like that. Obviously, you need two guys that are slightly different styles that can come in and give you a change of pace. But I'm with you, Chad. I think we might start hearing Marcus Crowley's name. Now, what I've heard, I think I heard this on the Bucknuts podcast, Crowley had a knee injury that he was nursing through most of last year. And Yeah, and the question is, will he be ready in time for spring? If he's going to miss spring drills and competition in spring practices, then that could really put him behind the eight ball. I hope he'll be ready to go. But should he be healthy and can compete in the spring, I agree with you. From what I've seen of him, I think he's got more explosive elements to his game than Master Teague does. Yeah. On offense, I got a question about who's going to replace KJ Hill. And I wonder, I was listening to Ryan Day's first press conference, kind of his first off-season press conference. I think it was last week. And he was asked, I think it was by Doug Lesmarie, about the receiver rotation in 2020. And he asked him, Lesmarie did, is it possible that he might move a guy that would otherwise be, an X or a Y to the slot? And Day did not dismiss that. He actually said what they're going to do is they're going to look at the 6 best receivers, and those are the guys that are going to play. And I think it was Ari Wasserman on The Athletic. His prediction is that actually Chris Olave is going to move from the outside into the slot, and he believes Julian Fleming will then take Olave's place on the outside opposite Garrett Wilson. I think that's an interesting development there. I'm going to be watching the slot closely because think about that. You have Olave's his speed and playmaking ability, his ability to do things after the catch to actually, go vertical and get behind guys playing in the slot. That could be pretty sick. Paige, what do you think about the receivers going into 2020?
I mean, are there enough balls to go around for all these guys?
Yeah.
And, I mean, again, how guys line up, I don't know enough about offensive schemes to know, what he's thinking or potential ways to, design this stuff. But these guys, if you believe the recruiting rankings of these wide receivers coming in, and not just Fleming, but Smith, I mean, they're going to be fine, and they're going to absolutely maybe lean on that a little bit more. If the running back position isn't quite what we think. And, just listening to you guys talk, it's like Crowley's going to be there. And then you talk, the guy's got a bad knee. Like, come on, when does that ever work out? I mean, it's just,
that's a good point.
I mean, he hasn't played too much. And he's got a bad knee and he's running back. Like, okay, if we're going to hang our hat on there, then maybe we have bigger problems than we think. So,
good point. Yeah, does Steel Chambers, the porn star Steel Chambers, come into the mix then?
Nice.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Chambers and Teague are kind of the same style of player. Anyway, go ahead, Paige.
And what does Sloaner call smooth Jameson?
Well, he's a receiver. So here's a question. I mean, what's the over-under on Ohio State receivers entering the transfer portal after the spring game? I'm not saying they need the incoming freshmen, but kids maybe that are already on the roster that are like, they see these kids coming in and be like, peace out.
Yeah, I mean, when you got people saying, like, that just shows you what kind of stud that Fleming is. Like, when they've already got him, like, starting. I mean, that kid's a man.
I mean, there's no way, all the kids, including the incoming freshmen and the kids that are on the roster now, there's got to at least one of these kids after spring ball. And it could very well be Jameson, actually. It could be like, hey, I mean, I'm not going to play. Because, I mean, you bring in, I mean, you've got Smith and Jigba just got bumped up to a 5-star. And some people are saying that he's actually a more polished receiver than Julian Fleming, that he actually played against much better competition in Texas than Fleming did in Pennsylvania. He played in a tougher league, is what I've been hearing and reading. You've got Fleming, Smith, and Jigba. G. Scott, who a lot of people, he's a high 4-star, just on the outside of a 5-star. And then Mookie Cooper, CP, that's your guy, Mookie, right?
Mookie.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Mookie.
We could very well.
He's a high 4-star, too.
Yeah. So it will be interesting to see, how many of these kids make the 2 deep of the freshmen, and then where they might move guys around, just to get them on the field, right? Like, it seems kind of foolish that if you got a guy who can contribute right away, that is an X or a Y, but actually could contribute, from the slot, then, play the guy, right? It seems kind of stupid to wait and make him wait for 2 years to play his more natural position, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one area, that's one position battle I'm really looking forward to seeing. KJ Hill is one of those guys that probably leaves somewhat underappreciated, even though he is the all-time leading receiver in Ohio State history. More receptions than anybody that's ever played. It's unbelievable. Yeah.
You can watch TV. Okay.
So anyway, guys, any other thoughts on the offense? Anything that you wanted to mention now? Position battles going into 2020?
Receivers, I was just going to say one thing. What was I going to say about receivers? Who are we losing? Victor?
We're losing Victor,
Mac, and KJ Hill.
KJ Hill. It's a lot of experience,
Right.
a lot of production. Yeah.
Yeah, and we, especially with Hill, a lot of experience. Mac never really realized what some thought he could do, and Victor had a couple of nice big plays. He was in there and made, he filled in, but that was probably because we had a lack of a superstar. With Olave and now with Garrett Wilson, those guys can hog up all the balls if they wanted to.
Yeah.
So we may not need 5-6 deep receivers in there with those two guys ready to take off. I'm hoping Wilson steps it up big time. He showed big time catches. I don't know if he needs to be returning punts anymore. But he could. This is a big year for him, I think.
Yeah.
He go the way of, a big player, Dante Wilson.
Yeah.
The guy we were begging to get better, and he just got worse each year.
Yeah.
Until he finally mercifully fell off the roster.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. I think it is going to be Olave and Wilson that'll be your lead dogs in that unit, and then somebody like a Julian Fleming or Smith and Jigba as a young guy coming in to sprinkle in some playmaking.
I keep reading about Jamison Williams, like he's going to supposed to have some big year next year.
We'll see. That's the thing. It is a crowded room, and Williams has speed. That guy can fly, but is he? Yeah. Some of these guys, the guys, Smith and Jigba and Julian Fleming, it might be tough to keep those guys off the field because they're polished. They got size. They can do everything. Yeah, that's
all those guys enrolled early too. They're already in school.
Yeah. 14 of the 2020 class are already in school. It's pretty crazy.
And most of them, all of them were like our highest recruits, which is unbelievable.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey guys, we're at about 50 minutes or so. Chad, I know you probably have to boogie. Is there anything else you guys wanted to mention? We can. I figure we can do another one of these after the spring game. And in fact, that's going to actually be a really fun game to watch because we're going to get to see a lot of these early enrollees play in the spring game. That'll be kind of must-see TV if you're an Ohio State fan. But any other comments you guys wanted to make before we wrap it up today?
On a scale of 1 to 10, where's everybody at on their grief scale post-Clemson game?
Oh, that's a good one. Paige, where are you?
Oh, that's a great one. I'm still bitter.
Yeah, I'm still hovering between a solid 5 and a 6. It
That's probably about
doesn't
right.
really totally want to go away.
Yeah.
I know.
Chad,
right?
how about you?
I've got some issues with still. Like Paige said, I'm probably at a 6-7 still, and I wake up every day saying, like, all right, I don't want to think about this, man. It's like just,
Well, think about it like this. Maybe the reward is that Wade came back. Maybe that's a little consolation. Wade's back. He's so upset about getting knocked out of that game, which is really turning the tide of the game.
Yeah.
We may not be seeing it.
I honestly,
did you hear
another full year of watching?
Yeah, I was just going to say that after I watched the national championship game, I started to feel a little bit better because I don't think we would have beaten LSU. I think we might have matched up a little bit better with them, but I don't think we would have beaten them. Not in frickin' the Superdome. I mean, every time LSU plays in the fucking national championship game, it's in New Orleans. It's crazy.
I'd like to think that we could, but I guess
I just they were the team of destiny. I mean, Joe Burrow was having a freaking 4-month out of body experience, and I just think given where the game was played, I thought like sure we probably could have come within 10, 12 points of them, but they were the team of destiny. It was just their year. And
Burrow playing against his old team, though, you never know how that can affect a guy.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Matter.
That's a good point.
Right.
And there were some turning points in that game with their linebacker guy.
Well, so how did you guys feel last year? After we went to the Rose Bowl and we beat Washington, but it was totally unsatisfying. Right? We were up 28-3 going into the fourth quarter, and we had to hang on for dear life, fall onto an onside kick to squeak it out. We finished 13-1. We finished number 3 in both polls. Same result this year, 13-1, number 3 in both polls. I'm sorry, I'm feeling overall when I look back on the season, I feel much better about the season as a whole this year, right, sitting here right now, than I did last year. Because last year I felt like if we could have gotten into the playoff field, we could have done some damage. And we didn't.
Right.
And then we played a lackluster kind of, who gives a shit Rose Bowl. And I don't know. Personally, I kind of feel okay about it. So in answer to your Paige, your question, on the grief scale, I'm about a 3. I'm looking ahead to 2020. I'm getting excited about 2020 now.
Yeah, well, you had a different sort of take, I think, than at least I did on the Clemson game, so that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I'm still not convinced. I think we would have given LSU all they could have handled.
And then let me ask you, why do you think we would have been a better matchup for LSU than what Clemson put out there?
Well, I think it's pretty simple. I believe we were better than Clemson. And it took 10 things to not go our way, and we still had the ball with a chance to win it, with 90 seconds left. And the other funny thing is watching the national championship game, I was kind of unsure who I was rooting for. It was somewhat cathartic watching, and if there is a karma god, right? I mean, it was looking down on Clemson, having a touchdown taken off the board, having your linebacker thrown out for targeting, right?
Yeah.
I mean, as I drank more and more beer, I started yelling and rooting more and more for LSU and screaming, obscenities at Clemson and Dabo. So there was some catharsis in that. But I don't know, dude. I mean,
Lawrence fumbling and the critical fourth quarter play when he took off. Yeah.
I mean,
I just think it is a huge missed opportunity for that team.
Yeah.
And even okay, so last year against the Rose Bowl, but we had that crappy defense, and that defense wasn't going to. We weren't riding that to a national championship. This team you need some luck. You definitely need some luck. We didn't get it, and it cost us, but we had every other ingredient, i.e. the coaching and the talent, and I will go to my death knowing that was a missed opportunity for a national championship at the 2019.
It was clearly a missed opportunity. You're absolutely right about that. No, fair enough. I mean, those are compelling. That's a compelling argument. Mike, what do you think? Do you think we would have made a better matchup for LSU than Clemson?
Yes. However, they are saying that this LSU team may have been the best college football team ever.
Certainly the best offense ever. You might be able to make that argument for sure.
Yeah. Well, and this is the thing is that this is one of the best Ohio State teams ever, and I think it was just one of those years where we happen to go up, against team. There was that many top teams playing in the same year. Mm-hmm. Clemson has a really solid team too, but they benefited from being there the last couple of years and being, they were poised. They did not let that, when we jumped on them in the beginning, they did not let that bother them, where we were in uncharted territory, that we didn't have the same experience.
Yeah.
We were better on talent level. And I think our corners would have been much better against Burroughs than their corners were. And it would have been a different game.
It would have been fun to watch.
Love to play him.
Would have been fun to watch Jeffrey Okuda go up against their stud receiver. I'm blanking on his name, but that would have been a hell of a matchup between those two. Chad, I think I know where you stand on this, but go ahead. Would Ohio State have made a better matchup against LSU in the title game?
I'd like to think so.
Yeah.
And a few points Paige made and a few that Mikey made. We'll never know. I feel like our defense could have manned up a little bit better than what Clemson did.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It would have been a great game. But did you? I read that got the Michigan stuff in the locker room now, but what they're focusing on too for the next season is that he's got the final score of the Ohio State Clemson game, and that's staying up all year.
I heard about that. Yeah,
I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, and I think Ryan Day addressed the crowd at a recent Ohio State basketball game. I think it was last week, right? And the Ohio State football team was recognized as Big Ten champions at halftime of that game. And Ryan Day addressed the crowd briefly for like a minute or two, and he basically said, "Look, that game did not sit well with us, and we will be using it as motivation for 2020. So if you're an Ohio State fan, you love hearing that sort of thing. And now it's, I agree with you. You get there, you have to take advantage of your opportunities because nothing is guaranteed. And, I certainly hope that they'll be back next year, but there's no guarantee. So when you're there, you got to cash it in. And
gotta cash it in.
You got to cash it in. Yeah, they didn't do it.
I think Ryan Day, he wants a national championship so bad, man. That guy, I believe in that guy. We're gonna fucking do it, dude. And the next, if it's not next year, it's gonna be the next couple of years. We will win the national championship.
I feel good about our chances. I do. I'm not panicked about it. I don't feel like, hey, that was our one opportunity. Who knows when we'll be back? I feel like we'll be. We're in good hands. I'm confident that we'll get more swings. In these coming years, and again, as you say, Chad, if not this year, then maybe, the years after that. So, we'll see. Guys, anything else you wanted to mention before we shut it down?
Tim, anything from you? Sorry, I guess he made it on. Oh, he's not on.
Mr.
Right.
Gallagher, yeah, he said he was going to join us. I don't know what happened, but All right, boys. Hey, thanks so much for making the time, guys. We'll connect in a few weeks, all right? Have a great Sunday.